સુખમાં સમરો દુઃખમાં સમરો સમરો દિવસ નિરાત જીવતા સમરો મરતા સમરો સમરો સૌ સંગાત સમરો મંત્ર ભલો નવકાર એ છે 14 પુરવનો સાર સમરો મંત્ર ભલો નવકાર એ છે 14 પુરવનો સાર યોગી સમરે ભોગી સમરે સમરે રાજા રંગ દેવો સમરે દાનવ સમરે સમરે સૌની શંક સમરો મંત્ર ભલો નવકાર એ છે 14 પુરવનો સાર સમરો મંત્ર ભલો નવકાર એ છે 14 પુરવનો સાર અડસત અક્ષર એ ના જાણો અડસત તીરથ સાર 8 સંપદાથી પરમાણો અડસિદ્ધિ દાતાર સમરો મંત્ર ભલો નવકાર એ છે 14 પુરવનો સાર સમરો મંત્ર ભલો નવકાર એ છે 14 પુરવનો સાર નવપદ એના નવનિધ આપે ભવ ભવના દુઃખ કાપે વીર વચનથી હૃદય વ્યાપે પરમતમ પદ આપે સમરો મંત્ર ભલો નવકાર એ છે 14 પુરવનો સાર સમરો મંત્ર ભલો નવકાર એ છે 14 પુરવનો સાર એના મહિમાનો નહીં પાર એનો અર્થ અનંત અપાર એના મહિમાનો નહીં પાર એનો અર્થ અનંત અપાર સમરો મંત્ર ભલો નવકાર એ છે 14 પુરવનો સાર સમરો મંત્ર ભલો નવકાર એ છે 14 પુરવનો સાર
Pranam, Jai Jinendra. Welcome to this class where we are on our ongoing topic of the previous lives of Bhagwan Mahavir. We'll start with the prayers and then carry on where we left off last week. Namo Orientanam, Namo Sittanam, Namo Ayariyanam, Namo Vutsayanam, Namo Loe Sabbasahunam, Eso Panchanamukaro Sabba Pava Panasanam, Manglanancha Sabvesim Parvam Havai Mangalam. Namo Orientanam, Namo Sittanam, Namo Ayariyanam, Namo Vutsayanam, Namo Loe Sabbasahunam, Eso Panchanamukaro Sabba Pava Panasanam, Manglanancha Sabvesim Parvam Havai Mangalam. Namo Orientanam, Namo Sittanam, Namo Ayariyanam, Namo Vutsayanam, Namo Loe Sabbasahunam, Eso Panchanamukaro Sabba Pava Panasanam, Manglanancha Sabvesim Parvam Havai Mangalam. कमठे धरणेन्द्र च शोचितं कर्म कुरुते प्रभुस्तुल्य मनोवृत्ति पार्श्वनाथ श्रीस्तु वः वीर सरसुरा सुरेंद्र महितो वीरमुदा संसृता वीरेणाभियत स्वकर्म निश्चयो वीराय नित्यं नमः वीरा तीर्थमिदं प्रोतमतुलं वीरशघोरं तपो वीरे श्रीधृति कीर्तिकान्ति निश्चय श्रीवीरभद्रं दिश अंगूठे अमृत वसे लपति तना भंडार श्री गुरु गौतम समरिये मनवांछित फलदातार We are learning about the previous lives of Bhagwan Mahavir, and in this narrative we have explored the various ups and downs that the soul suffers from in its journey from one life to another, and the reasons of any particular ascent and the reasons for further descent have been explored. Last week we learned about the particularly important life as the first Vasudev of this Bharat called Triprushta. And before we go on from where we left off in the story of Triprushta Vasudev, let's just recap all the other lives. And let me share my screen with you. So you've seen the slides before. The first life, when the soul achieves samyaktva, that is when the counting starts from for all of us, but for great people, this is how the narrative is uh, defined. So Bhagavan Mahavir's soul achieves samyaktva in the first life as Naisar and goes to Saudharma Devlok, and in the third life is born as Marichi, uh, the grandson of Bhagwan Rushabdev. And in this very significant life, there are several incidents that we discussed that lay the foundation for a future long process towards achieving the status of a Tirthankar, and the reason why that whole period gets extended, and also other significant bad karmas that are acquired in that life also determine what happens in the subsequent lives. In the fourth life, as a Dev in Brahmdev fifth life as a Brahmin called Kaushik, and following that particular life, he spends a long time in subhuman life forms. In the sixth life, so these are the narratives about the major lives. The subhuman life forms, they are not counted or listed, but from the description, there would have been a huge number of those subhuman life forms. So a life after a life of short lifespan, and then death, and then another life of as a short lifespan. And by subhuman, we mean one sense, two sense, three sensed, four sensed, any of those lives. Five sensed lives, as we will see today, are considered as major lives, and those are described. So in the sixth major life, is born as a Brahmin again, is Pushpamitra. He becomes a Tridandi ascetic towards the end of his long life, acquires a lot of punya, and in life 7, Bhav 7, goes to Saudharma Devlok with a moderately long lifespan. In the 8th bow, is born again as Agnidyot Brahmin in a place called Chaitya with a long lifespan of 60 lakh purva, and towards the end of the life, as per the previous sanskar or the understanding that the soul is acquired from previous lives, he becomes a three-dandi ascetic again and acquires more punya, and in the 9th life goes to the second Ishan Devlok with a moderately long lifespan. In the 10th life, as a Brahmin who is born from Devlok as Agnibhuti in Mandar with a lifespan of 56 lakh purvas, and towards the end of this life, he again becomes a three-dandi ascetic and acquires a lot of punya. In the 11th life, born again in Devlok to enjoy the fruits of the great punya that was acquired in the previous lives. Is born in Sanat Kumar Devlok with a moderate lifespan. In Bow 12, life 12, born again as a Brahmin called Bhardwaj, and the same pattern again. So the thing to note about this, that because of the previous association, even though there would have been ascetic monks, Nirgranth monks, following the vows of the monks of Jain Dharma, the soul does not actually get an opportunity or doesn't get interested in following the path which could very much more likely take him to a much better spiritual awakening and a faster route to moksha. And these are the sanskar that have been developed in a previous life, and they are so strong because of everything that he has done before in the life of Marichi, that the life in a royal household, the life where exposure to Jain Dharma or other Tirthankar Paramatmas would be easy, is not acquired. So in all these lives, the circumstances dictate that the soul's spiritual progress is limited to a certain level, and the soul does not get the necessary understanding to progress on further. And there's a huge lesson here for us, because one of the things that nature repeatedly does and insists on is that it gives us what we value. So if the desires that we value and the kinds of progress that we value and the virtues that we value in others are defined by such limitations, then nature will grant us that. And the more intensely we have formed those associations, the more likely is that this sanskar or this particular associations will remain imprinted on the soul and come to fruition in lifetime after lifetime, as we are seeing here. In the 13th bow, as Dev again in Mahendra Devlok with a moderate lifespan. In bow 14, as a Sthavar, as a Brahmin called Sthavar, human, in the city called Rajgri with a lifespan of 34 lakh purva. In 15th life, the Dev in Brahm Devlok with a moderate lifespan. And again, first time in a royal household after a long time in the 16th major bow, is born as Vishwabhuti, the prince in a royal household. And as a result of some incident that strengthens his vairagya. Vishwabhuti becomes a Nirgranth or Jain monk and follows this path very well for a long time and acquires a huge amount of punya, but towards the end of that life, he loses everything because of a teasing or a taunt from his cousin with whom he had some enmity before, and loses all the spiritual value that is acquired in this particular life as a Nirgranth monk, and forms a Niyanu or asks for Niyanu to have the strength to kill his cousin Visakhanandi in a subsequent life. Because of all the punya that is acquired in this life, in the 17th birth is born in Mahasukra Devlok, and after using up all the punya there, in the next life he is born as Riprusht Vasudev. And last week we learned about the life of Riprusht Vasudev, and we described the circumstances around his birth. We looked at the story of how the Tripusht's father engineers to marry his own very beautiful daughter called Mrugavati, and makes her his wife. And Tripusht is born of Mrugavati, and he's destined to be the Vasudev. And the story of Vasudevs are that they acquire the huge kingdom of three continents of the particular kshetra by defeating the Prativasudev, who would have acquired all this huge empire as a result of his own efforts by fighting many, many battles and defeating many, many kings. So, as I reminded everybody in the story of Ramayana, Ravana was the Prativasudev, Lakshmana was the Vasudev, and Ram was the Balram. And similarly, in this particular story of Tripusht Vasudev, Tripusht, the soul of Bhagwan Mahavir, as an elder brother, and they ultimately defeat the Prativasudev Ashwagriv. We looked at the story before he becomes the Vasudev, before he defeats Ashwagriv, about the killing of the lion and what happens, what is the reason why they were commanded to protect the people from the lion, who was killing a lot of innocent farmers and other people and creating a huge level of unrest amongst the people. So Tripusht Vasudev solves this particular problem, and he becomes extremely well known and feared. And ultimately, he defeats Ashwagriv and becomes the Vasudev. We also looked at the incident of when Tripusht Vasudev, in his enjoyment of music, decides to punish a court musician who has forgotten his command of stopping the music once he falls asleep, and punishes him by pouring molten lead in both his ears. We looked at how this incidents in this particular life, the one of pouring molten lead in this musician, comes to fruition in the life of Bhagwan Mahavir, when the Gowal, who was the soul of this particular musician, comes in contact with Bhagwan Mahavir, and without really knowing why he reacts in such an angry manner at a minor incident, which to him was major at the time, and he punishes Bhagwan Mahavir by hammering in nails in both his ears. And we also remembered the story of what happens subsequently when a physician recognizes that the amount of pain that Bhagwan Mahavir is in and discovers the reason for it and makes arrangements with uh, a local carpenter or ironsmith to help him remove the nails. And the removal of the nail was so extremely painful that this is the only time in Bhagwan Mahavir's life, in his 12.5 years of penance, where he suffers terrible atrocities. He shouts out in agony, and the strength of that particular cry was so strong that it cracked a nearby mountain. And as I said, that place is still around, and it's a tirth where you can go and have a look. We also looked at the repercussions from the killing of the lion and what happens to that lion in a subsequent life, and how he comes into contact with Bhagwan Mahavir to from a distance. And just looking at Bhagwan Mahavir, he decides not to follow the path because just the sight of him fills him with dislike, and completely tells Gautam Swami that if Bhagwan Mahavir is your guru and you're asking me to follow him, I can't do that. And he goes back to becoming a farmer. But that in itself was that particular incident of him being convinced by Gautam, Guru Gautam, to give up his worldly life and become a monk was the beginning of his spiritual progress as well. So even indirectly, remotely, Bhagwan Mahavir did him a great favor to the soul of this lion who he had killed in the life as Tripusht Vasudev. Following this life as Vasudev, and as is normal for all Vasudevs, is born in hell. And for Tripusht Bhagwan Mahavir's soul, the life 19 was in the seventh hell. Now, very briefly, life in Narak is extremely painful. We discussed what happens in this particular hell. There are no Paramadhami devs to make people suffer. They suffer from each other. The whole birth is extremely painful, and the huge long life is spent in total darkness. But they have Avdignan, they recognize the other souls in Narak around them, and the whole lifespan is spent fighting each other. The body is so irritable that they constantly itch. The place is extremely cold, and the whole life is full of pain and suffering without a moment's respite. From this life in Narak, Bhagwan Mahavir's soul is born in life 20 as a lion in a jungle. Some facts about reincarnation from the life in Narak. The soul is not born again in Narak immediately in the next life after having spent a lifetime in Narak. Also, because it has no opportunity to acquire any punya, a life that a soul that leaves the life as a narki is not born in Devlok. So the soul can only be born either as a human being or as a Tiryanj, but not again in Narak and not again in Devlok. In this 20th life as a lion in jungle, he spends a long time in hunting, in killing a lot of animals for food, and even otherwise. The whole life is spent in violence, and obviously a lot of bad karma is acquired. In the 21st life, Bhagwan Mahavir's soul is born in the 4th Narak, again from the life of a king. So from a Triprusht Vasudev, he has acquired enough bad karma to take him down to the 7th hell. In the life as a lion, the soul does not have or did not have the necessary capacity to form enough karma to take him down so down to the 7th hell, but he acquires enough karma to take him down to the 4th Narak hell, which is named Pankprabha. The land in this hell is filled with mud. So all the Narak souls that are born there spend the whole huge lifetime of 10 Sagarupam completely living their life out in a land which is just muddy. So uh, it's constantly squidgy mud, and you go through all the suffering and the pain that is normal for the souls in Narak. Following this particular life, Bhagwan Mahavir's soul spends many lifetimes in subhuman life forms. What it says here that નરકમાંથી નીકળ્યા પછી ઘણા ક્ષુદ્ર ભોગમાં પરિભ્રમણ કરીને એ જીવ રથપુર નામના નગરમાં પ્રિય મિત્ર નામ રાજાની વિમલા રાણીની કુક્ષીએ પુત્રપણે ઉત્પન્ન થયું. તેનું નામ વિમલ કુમાર પાડવામાં આવ્યું. Bhagwan Mahavir's soul spends many lifetimes in subhuman life forms, and in life 22, the soul is born as a prince to Queen Vimla and King Priyamitra of the city-state of Rathpur. He is named Vimal Kumar. So after a long time from the life of Triprusht Vasudev, where the soul acquires a lot of bad karmas, blackens itself, and descends for a long time into all these places. And again, there is an opportunity here to get better and ascend spiritually. In this life as Vimal Kumar, Bhagwan Mahavir's soul's ascent starts again, and within a few lifetimes after that, the soul gets to the position where he then acquires Tirthankar Nam Karma and gets born as Bhagwan Mahavir. But before that, Vimal Kumar, after having spent many lifetimes with all the bad sanskar and doing things that has taken him down spiritually, has now regained or retained the essential good qualities of the soul. Vimal Kumar is a very kind and generous prince. Even though he is born in a royal household and is surrounded by all kinds of material pleasures, he does not become engrossed in that, and he retains his spiritual awareness, because from now the soul is on an ascending cycle and the future is bright. He was very kind and loving to everybody. Once, when he was roaming in the forest with his friends as a prince, they suddenly come across a lot of noise and animals running around from one place to other trying to escape a shower of arrows that some hunters have unleashed on the forest to try and get as many animals killed as they can. And they hear a lot of noise of extremely frightened animals which are running from one place to another trying to escape being killed by these hunters who have come into the forest. Vimal Kumar, even though he was a Kshatriya prince, because of his kind nature, had not taken up the sport of hunting, which would have been common in some royal households. But Vimal Kumar was an expert archer as well, and hearing the sound of frightened animals and seeing what is happening, he retaliates by showering arrows to the people who were trying to frighten the animals and kill them. And he does it with such skill that nobody loses their life, but there is a barrier to the hunters having their way and killing more animals. And he does this very kindly and saves a lot of animals. So that was the nature of the soul from this particular life onwards. So all the good instincts, all the basic greatness of the soul now shines through, and all the bad aspects that had brought down the descent into hell, the descent into pride and this extreme anger and hatred for one person that had pulled him down so much, and this pride and this ignorance that had descended him into lives where he did not actually get any particular exposure to the right path. All that is now behind him, and Vimal Kumar continues to progress spiritually, to retain his virtues and to expand on them, and does it so well that progressively he's acquiring more and more punya karma that will ultimately give him great happiness in the future, but not at the expense of the progress of his soul. So if we acquire punya by doing good deeds without spiritual awareness and only for acquiring pleasures of the senses, or in response to hatred, we trade punya that we've acquired, like Triprushta did, then ultimately that punya will succeed in taking us down, as we've seen. But here, the punya is acquired by doing good, but also by being good. So spiritually, Vimal Kumar is now at a very clean and a very contented place, and he continues to help people. પ્રજાને વાત્સલ્ય ભાવે રક્ષણ આપી તેણે રાજ્યની આબાદી વધારી દીધી. So eventually Vimal Kumar ascends the throne, becomes the king, and for a long time he protects the citizens of his land, stops wars, makes his particular kingdom very strong so it is secure, and does a lot of good in his lifetime for the betterment of the whole population. And during all this very successful life as a good king, very well loved by all the population, and enjoying the pleasures that the life of a king, the life as a king would give him, he does not lose the need to pursue a spiritual life that would ultimately result in his progress. His life was virtuously, his life was very virtuous, and it was to a very high level. And ultimately, towards the end of his life, Vimal Kumar becomes a monk, becomes a Nirgranth monk. And spends the last few years of his life as a monk. And towards the end of that life, he acquires enough punya to give him the life of a Chakravarti. And in the 23rd life, sorry, I'm making a mistake here. This is life 22, as life 21 was the fourth Narak. This is life 22, and Vimal Kumar. And in life 23, Bhagwan Mahavir's soul is born as a Chakravarti. Now, he's born in Mahavideh Kshetra called Upper Videha, and there is a place called Mukha Nagri there, where he's born as to a great king. And as with Tirthankar Paramatmas, the mother of a Chakravarti sees these 14 dreams, the same dreams, but the mother of a Chakravarti sees them in a very vague form. The mother of Tirthankar Paramatma sees these 14 dreams very, very clearly. And having seen these dreams, the royal Purohits predict the future that this prince will become a Chakravarti. And just a brief description of what Chakravarti is. For that particular land, the Chakravarti becomes the emperor of the whole of that land. So if you look at Bharat Chakravarti, he was the emperor of the whole of Bharat Kshetra. So that is a huge amount of land, and not the current world that as we know it. This is a very small, limited part of Bharat Kshetra. In Mahavideh Kshetra, where in the 23rd life, Bhagwan Mahavir's soul is born, he becomes the Chakravarti of that particular Vijay of Mahavideh Kshetra. A Chakravarti acquires 14 Ratnas. Out of these, the most powerful weapon known to mankind, the Chakra Ratna, is also developed, and he has a great amount of strength. He's got a huge number of soldiers in his armies, and he's got all kinds of weapons. And he sets out on a, a tour of conquering all the other small states throughout that particular world. And after a long journey, all the kings are conquered, and they are retained as administrators in their own particular state. But the Chakravarti is the emperor, and his power is completely greater than anybody else. Devs also come and support and look after the Chakravarti. He has very special abilities as well, and the Chakravarti is also the recipient of what is called Nav Nidhi. So he has 14 Ratnas and 9 Nidhis, which are basically uh, particular treasures of all kinds of wealth. There are lots of things that we can learn about the life of a Chakravarti, but Vimal Kumar's soul in the next life becomes Priyamitra Chakravarti in this place. However, in this particular life, if the Chakravarti loses his spiritual awareness, then the chances of descent into hell is not unknown either, and that does happen. And in this particular choice, out of all the Chakravartis, there have been a few who have gone to Narak as well. Bharat Chakravarti, as we know, obviously went to Moksha, but other Chakravartis, some of them have actually descended into hell. Priyamitra Chakravarti, however, Bhagwan Mahavir's soul is very much aware of his uh, spiritual self, and towards the end of his life, after enjoying long rule as a very, very successful and undisputed king, emperor, Priyamitra becomes very detached from life as a result of a very minor incident that probably we all see on a daily basis. But this particular view that Priyamitra Chakravarti actually saw inspired him to understand the nature of our life, and very quickly he decided to become a monk. So this is what happens. Once when Priyamitra Chakravarti is sitting in the gallery of his huge palace and watching the sky, he's noticing the movement of the clouds and how the clouds actually change shape, merge into each other, move from one place to other. And that scene fascinates him, and he begins to think that life is like that, that nothing is constant and everything keeps on changing. And what is the value of this life? What the soul really needs is a life which is non-changing, which is absolutely peaceful and happy, and which has no ups and downs. So he becomes very detached from this kind of life, and soon afterwards, his men announced that there is a very learned Acharya called Potil Acharya who has come to the kingdom, and he goes to listen to him. And after listening to Potilacharya, he makes up his mind and immediately goes back to the kingdom, makes his son the king, gives away his throne to his son, and returns back to become an ascetic under the auspices of this Potil Acharya as a Nirgranth monk, Jain monk. And the word that is describes this is called Sarvavirti. Sarvavirti is renouncing everything and accepting the vows of a monk. And in those times, there would be 4 vows. In our times now, this would be 5 vows. And he spends 10 million years. His lifespan was very long. So it says, Ek crore varashnu ayushya. So he spends 10 million years as a monk and acquires a huge amount of punya. And also spiritually, he prepares his soul to such an extent that the foundation for his future birth as Bhagwan Mahavir is laid down, and the soul is very rapidly progressing spiritually. All the bad parts of the nature that he had acquired in the previous lives are completely disappearing. And it's as if he is in a battle to get rid of all the karmas that were there. And the end of this long life as a Nirgranth Muni, as a monk, in the 24th life, he is born in Sukradevlok in Sarvarth Viman and spends a long time in this Devlok. And in the 25th life, he is born as Nandan Kumar. And this was one of the most significant lives. And we'll start discussing that next week. And we might finish this narrative about Bhagwan Mahavir's previous life maybe in a couple of weeks' time, and then agree on when we will start with the next topic. So I'll end here. We are looking at how Bhagwan Mahavir's life following Tripusht Vasudev's bhav descends into hell and then into the life of a lion, then again back into hell, and then subsequently in many, many subhuman life forms, and ultimately going back to a human life as a prince when the time has come for his spiritual progress. And as Prince Vimal Kumar, that progress is very well strengthened. And in the next life, he becomes a Chakravarti, which is a result of a huge amount of punya. And then the ascent starts. And the life after the Chakravarti again goes to Devlok. And then the next life that we will discuss is that of Nandan Kumar. So I'll end here now, but if there are any questions, we'll take them. I stop the slideshow. We've got time.
Ajitbhai, Nick has sent in a question.
Yeah.
He asked, in the current period, there are 5 vows for a Muni, whereas in the past 4 vows. Which
Yes.
is the additional vow and why?
So the additional vow of brahmacharya. So the 5 vows that we have are complete non-violence, complete truthfulness, complete non-stealing, complete brahmacharya, and complete detachment from any attachment to wealth. Now, in the time of the 22 Tirthankars in the middle, say from the 2nd to the 23rd, the nature of the population, the nature of the people is smart but simple. So they are very understanding but very clear in their minds about the principles that actually dictate the limitations that are posed by the vows, and they understand a lot from small instructions. In the life, in the times of Bhagwan Rishabhdev, say for example, the souls are simple, but they are also not as understanding of the principles, not having been exposed to them before, and the whole atmosphere being very different. So they find it difficult to understand the principles, but once they are told something, they very simply accept that and strive to follow that. However, because of their simplicity and difficulty in understanding some aspects of knowledge and not having the ability or the intelligence to decipher everything for themselves, the Muni Bhagwans in that time, in Bhagwan Rishabhadev's time, would have these 5 vows. From Bhagwan Ajitnath to Bhagwan Parshnath, the Munis had 4 vows, where the vow of brahmacharya was incorporated in the vow of non-possessiveness. Now, we would find it quite difficult to understand that all kinds of sensual pleasures, all pleasures of the senses, start off with the sense of possession. So, for example, if we say that I want to enjoy my food, then there are 2 steps involved in that. I want to enjoy my food meaning that particular item is something that I want to possess, and then I want to enjoy it. So the pleasure of the sense of taste is associated with initially the acquisition of that particular object of desire. So here when we talk about brahmacharya is the desire for sensual pleasure from a person of the opposite sex or the same sex, but it's about sensual pleasures. But the word brahmacharya also incorporates sensual pleasures of other senses. So it is simple for people in the times of Bhagwan Ajitnath to Bhagwan Parshnath to understand that possessiveness is at the root of desires, whereas for us, that distinction is difficult to define. Therefore, the vow of brahmacharya is added on. Similarly, in the times of Bhagwan Rishabhdev. So this is clearly described in Kalp Sutra, and this is what we read every year when we read the Kalp Sutra. But those are the 4 vows in the times of the 22 Tirthankars and the 5 vows in our times. Hope that answers your question, Nick.
Yes, it does. Thank you very
Yeah.
much.
Okay. Anybody else? what I'd like us to actually think about, because all these stories, and then if you look at our heritage, our culture, and everything that all of us have been hearing about, the life of Ram, Ramayana, the greatness of the souls that we are describing. So the story of Lakshman, Ram, Bharat, Ravan, all that is part of the narratives of the 360 Shalaka Purush Charitra in this particular time cycle. And the story of Ram also comes in uh, described in great detail in Jan Ramayana, some variations in the narrative. But if you look at the core of the virtues that are being described of these great people, and the description of the particular faults and the vices that pull people down. So, for example, if we learned about the Ramayana, Jainism says that Ravan is going to be a future Tirthankar. But even such a soul descended down for the love of Sita, who is somebody else's wife, abducts her, and is unwilling to release her because of his pride, because of what he is, and is ultimately gets defeated and killed in this battle, goes down to hell, and will ultimately ascend again as a result of all the core virtues that are then subsequently developed. And all the stories of the great Tirthankars, Chakravartis, Baladev, Vasudevs, and Prativasudevs that are described in this 360 Shalaka Purush Charitra teaches about the kinds of things that pull us down, teach us about the kinds of things that elevate us spiritually. And the core of all these lessons are, the core is basically that the more you understand who you are, the more you understand your true nature, and you value that true nature more than the very attractive outside materialistic associations that we cultivate and value. So the moment we fall down to forgetting who we are, and we begin to identify ourselves with the material pleasures and identify ourselves with the body that we are associated with, descent starts. When all the vices of anger, greed, all that takes hold, then descent starts. And in terms of progress, the moment you begin to understand your true nature, so in the story of Vimal Kumar, the narrative describes that he was a kind person, that he valued life, that he protected innocent animals who were being killed by hunters, that he rules wisely, he looks after his subjects in his kingdom, and he tries to ensure that his population retains its spiritual roots and makes it possible for them to become very peaceful and happy and lead a honest and a religious life. He does all that because he recognizes his true nature. And one of the things that I keep on repeating in my other class is that how do we recognize whether we are on the right path or not? Now, if our true nature is being recognized, then the true nature of the soul is of absolute joy, peace, happiness, and the absence of any kind of bad feelings towards others. So the soul, by its very nature, is Prem Swarup, Prem meaning love for all life. So the basic essential quality of the soul is that anything that tells us different, that other beings or other souls are higher or lower, or they are inferior, or they are subjects of dislike or hatred or discrimination of any kind, then we need to become aware that that is a path of descent. So what actually goes on within ourselves, and if any of our reactions makes us unhappy or a bit clouded in our understanding and clarity, then we are doing something wrong. I find that kind of an awareness very useful, because that then teaches you that any deviation from your true self and your true nature is a path of descent, and anything that actually helps you climb out of that and become kinder, more generous, more loving towards anybody, towards everybody. And ultimately, if you look at the root of happiness, and I was in a course for 4 days until Sunday, and on the last day, there is a brilliant GP who came to teach us about how to look after ourselves. And some of the core stuff about what is evidence-based, about what makes people healthier and happier, the core qualities are all spiritual qualities. So some simple things that were being taught are random acts of kindness. Now, some of you may have heard this as a path towards happiness. What makes you happy, what reduces your stress, what improves the state of all the parameters of your body. So even medically, there is a great deal of evidence that spiritual awareness actually gives us happiness, not only in this life, but in subsequent lives as well. And that is ultimately what religion is teaching us. And all these stories are basically telling us that people who followed those paths achieved the greatness and achieved the path of progress and went to moksha, and those who did not descended. And the same soul who has done this journey of ascent and descents several times, Bhagwan Mahavir's life is a great lesson for all of us. And we've just done an introduction, but in great depth, if we studied each and every life with this particular frame in mind, what was good in that life, what was bad in that life, what helped him become better in the future, what made his subsequent lives worse and reflect on all those virtues and faults, that will help us improve ourselves tremendously. Okay. Sorry, it was another lecture, but anybody else?
I've not received any further questions in the chat.
Okay. Can I just ask everybody, it would help me tremendously if we made this more interactive. And one way of starting that would be to allow everybody to switch on their videos. Would you all feel comfortable with that? And I know we started off with this idea that that may make it very difficult, but since we now have about 20 to 30 devices on at any one time, I mean, a lot of people catch up on YouTube later on during the week, but when we are live, we could switch the videos on. How do you all feel about that? Does silence mean consent? And will you switch on your videos next week?
So everyone has the ability to switch on the video. So whoever's
Yeah.
not shy, please do switch on your video so we can see you.
It would help make this class more interactive. Do people find it difficult to switch on their videos? What is the, I mean, I know we started off with saying no, but I think it's probably a good idea to do that. Can I ask a few people, what about, say, Sheila Ben, Bharat Bhai, Nick, Darshana, Shalina? Would you be happy to switch on your videos, Sandeep? You see, this way I don't even know who is listening. Thank you.
Pranam Ajitbhai. I would be happy to switch
You'll
on
be
the
happy.
radio, to video.
Thank you.
Same,
Okay.
yeah. મને પણ વાંધો નથી વિડીયો ઓન બધા કરે તો ઇટ્સ ફાઇન બધા આપણે
I think occasionally you can switch it off. That's fine as well.
yeah.
And there are now tools on Zoom which can give you any background. So it doesn't picture your background of wherever you are sitting. You can choose to blur that out. You can make it clear that your background is, I can understand you, me not showing you the mess I'm sitting in, and that is understandable, but you don't need to show your background. It would help. So let's see if you can please try and do that from next week. That will, because the next topic that we are thinking of starting, I mean, we've had two suggestions, Now Tattva and Jain Geography, and I'm thinking that I might be able to incorporate both those topics in the next course, basically. So that topic is going to be difficult. It would be slow, but it would be very useful for people to have an interaction so that we understand what the difficulties are in grasping those elements. And a lot of what we might learn in Now Tattva will need questions and answers so that we can check as to what people understand. So please feel free next week. I'll end now. Thank you all very much. Chiragna Virudh, Kai Bambulai Hui, Te Savi Hu, Manujan Kaya Kari, Tasmichami Dukudam. If I've said anything against the teachings of our Kirtankat Paramatmas and the Guru Bhagwans, I ask for forgiveness. Sarvamangalamangelyam, Sarvakalyan Karanam, Pradhanam Sarvadharmanam, Jainam Jeti Sasanam. Thank you all very much.
Pranam Ajitbhai, thank you.
Ram Bharat, thank you.
Pranam Ajitbhai,
Ram
thank you
Ajitbhai,
very much.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
Jai
you.
Srinath.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Ajit. Bye.
Thank you all.